this is Tina Perinotto from the Fifth Estate and the Green List. This is our video podcast series, TFE Learn, dedicated to our favourite topic, solutions. Hello, this is Tina Perinotto. I'm editor of the Fifth Estate, and this is our new podcast series called TFE Learn. And for this session, I've invited Ross Harding from Finding Infinity. Ross is going to be speaking at an event coming up soon, so you may hear this much later or see it much later. So we thought we'd get in early and find out what Ross has been up to, because his business is really quite unusual in my view. It's, isn't it, Ross? It does some really strange and unique things. And when I first came across Ross, he was running a little festival in Melbourne, and I went, what is going on here? It was just incredible. Lots of fun. It was a few years ago now. And since then, he's been doing some really incredible things with his team. And really from what I gather, Ross brings together a whole lot of disparate people to create solutions for really sustainable buildings and cities. That's how I am thinking of it. But Ross, thank you very much for joining us on TFE Learn.
Thanks for having me, Tina.
Okay, so now we're ready to learn something about your business and what you're trying to achieve and what you have achieved.
Perfect. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I'll get started. I can share some things. I guess to sort of build off what you were saying, what the hell is it that we do? So I guess to kind of build off what you were just saying then, Tina, like to kind of explain what the hell it is that we do. I originally my background's mechanical engineering and finance. I studied sustainable energy engineering in Sweden and ended up getting a job in Sydney and worked in Sydney as basically an ESD consultant. And then I did that for a fair while and worked in London as well with that same company. And then after a while, I felt like I was just kind of fighting internal barriers rather than external barriers. So I ended up quitting my job, jumping on a cargo ship, moving to Mexico and starting Finding Infinity. And it's sort of evolved over the years from almost like a cause to sort of a creative agency. And then eventually we sort of brought consulting and creativity together into one whole package. But we're still doing ESD consulting in that way. We still do sort of energy modeling, waste analysis and sort of water modeling and embodied carbon calculations. And we do a lot of, reporting and all that side of things. But I guess just the reports are not enough. And I think what we're probably interested in is really trying to make that stuff happen. So we end up doing all kinds of different things to try and make that happen. And that can range from working direct with developers on feasibility studies to sort of collaborating with architects or doing traditional consulting, or sometimes, as you mentioned, we like to throw a party. So I can share with you a bit of a range of that kind of stuff if you like.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So in the end, I guess maybe sometimes we do confuse people because we do lots of different things at once. And partially that's because we are a bunch of weirdos and the team are a bunch of weirdos, and we're sort of a mixture of sort of engineers, architects. We're sort of doing finance in-house and sort of cost estimating and also project managing. So it's sort of, I guess we don't look at ourselves as fitting into one sort of discipline anymore, but we just see ourselves as problem solvers. And each different project, I guess, has its different problems it needs to solve. And so this is a bit of an overview. We're working on a range of different projects, from mostly it's like buildings and master plans. We're doing a lot of retrofit projects at the moment. But yeah, we were sort of as I sort of mentioned, we do temporary installations too. Everything for us is about trying to push it as far as we possibly can environmentally. So we sort of see every project as an opportunity to help speed up the transition of our cities to becoming completely self-sufficient. And I guess for us, each project we're trying to target 100% renewables, water neutral, zero waste and zero embodied carbon. Or another way of looking at it is, particularly for existing buildings, we're trying to transform them from consumers to producers. So if you kind of lift up the bonnet and have a look inside, this is probably, might look a little bit boring in some ways, but this is a lot of what we're doing. we're basically like, building spreadsheets, doing like energy modeling and calculations to make cost estimates, to estimate the capital costs, the environmental impact, the running costs, the payback periods of initiatives, the spatial requirements, lifespans, and all of those things are sort of finding the most cost-effective pathway to hitting zero impact on projects. And not just by paying for offsets, but by doing real things on site. And I guess from our experience, what we've learned over the years is that like everyone always says this stuff is expensive, but actually it's really not. Like often it comes down to can be as low as sort of 2 or 3% of the total project value to go from the worst possible thing that we can build to the best possible thing that we can build. And so if you sort of get those numbers and spatials integrated into the feasibility study from the beginning of a project, like it's kind of a piece of cake to get that to kind of to happen. But I think usually what's happening is people are chucking these things on at the end, and then people are designing these projects that are sort of, have a lot of cantilevers and a lot of fancy facades and a lot of complexity that adds way more than this 2 to 3% budget. And then, the standard process on projects is just, at the end when the price comes back as too expensive, we just basically value manage out all the environmental initiatives and all the landscape, basically. So it's sort of, I guess we spend a lot of time trying to put that front and center and then trying to ensure it actually happens. And I think like what we find is that, like this is sort of, a bunch of different projects we've worked on over the years. And in some ways, like I kind of like to joke about it in the sense that like, probably 99% of the projects we've worked on over the years have never actually gone ahead. We've written so many reports and found so many solutions to demonstrate that, this stuff is totally possible. But there's probably, only a few that are actually kind of like courageous enough to sort of actually put this stuff front and center and to deliver them. And I guess probably the exciting thing is that we're seeing more and more of these projects coming up. And I'm going to show a few of them to you today. So I thought I would start by actually showing you this piece of software that we've developed, which is sort of, it's like we've basically turned what we do into tech, which I thought might also just help explain what we do, as I know sometimes we confuse people. So
yeah, it really helps to turn things into technology. I hope. I'm hoping you're not. I thought that was a joke, but okay.
Well, basically what we've done is like, all the sort of 10 years of like analysis and calculations and spreadsheets and all these sorts of things, we've just basically turned it into a pretty simple piece of software.
Okay.
So at the moment, we've built this for apartment buildings, but we're slowly going to build it for commercial buildings, hotels, and different typologies. But I guess it's a way of us providing our advice faster and making it easier for people to kind of sort of almost like start to be able to do themselves. So if you just picture this, like, it's framing it as a profitable pathway to zero. So I guess this is what we're trying to target is, sort of on budget, zero environmental impact and zero operating costs. So I'll show you how we do that. So in effect, we've this is together with a company called Neuron have helped us develop this. So basically, we're getting it to a point where you can just put as little information in as you have really early on in a project. So area, number of floors, space type, and the floor area, and the address. Click submit, and basically what that does is it spits out what your annual energy consumption is, water consumption, waste, embodied carbon, operational costs, and then the capital cost for that typology. And then from there, we sort of look at different scenarios. So we sort of then compare what the baseline is in comparison to, say, a best practice scenario or world leading. And you can kind of choose your own adventure. So this is sort of, you can pick which initiatives are in which scenario and which are not. And then with a click of a button, we're actually able to get out the energy consumption, water consumption for each of those different scenarios, embodied carbon, operational carbon, running costs, and then also compare them in terms of what the capital cost implications are and what the paybacks are. So when people say, that sounds bloody expensive to take this thing from, basically the worst possible building to the best possible building. We just like to provide the answers and explain exactly what those numbers are.
So you mean over a particular lifespan or time period?
Well, it's sort of a bit of both, actually, because we're estimating the upfront capital costs of going from minimum to maximum, but then we also estimate all of the running costs in the project as well. And I feel like it is a big gap in the industry at the moment, is that I don't know many people that are providing advice on running costs, and I think it's a big sort of it's a big missed opportunity, to be honest. I think that people don't really, like, no one really on a design process is actually sitting there analysing what is the running cost of this facility going to be for the next 40 or so years, which is weird.
Have you been able to test how accurate it is on a building that's actually been produced, like built?
Yeah, I'm going to show you one today, actually. So the office that we're in, we're monitoring at the moment. So I can show you how that's performing, but it's very much in line with what we expected. So it's sort of, and I guess this is something interesting, is that actually all environmental consultants can do this. Like, it's, you look at it, a building services engineer, they analyze the peak loads for all of the equipment because they need to make sure it's going to work, but they're not necessarily focused on making sure it's as efficient as possible. Whereas an environmental consultant is, generally looking at all of the annual demands for energy, water, waste, and, a few other things. And so basically, if you just sort of translate those into financials, then you can kind of understand what the running costs are. So this is then coming back to the what we're doing with this tech stuff. It's like we basically just clicked optimize, and then we're able to sort of understand for the, if you only selected the most profitable initiatives, here's what the impact would be. And then with a click of a button, we can spit out sort of like all of these numbers, step downs, and those numbers that I was showing you in terms of CapEx, OpEx, paybacks for each initiative individually. And so I think this is often the thing, is that, like, people are often following more of a rating system mentality, or they're trying to tick certain boxes for something, or just meet the minimum code. Our view is that most buildings that are getting built are just missing really great commercial opportunities. And, those commercial opportunities also happen to have a significant impact on running costs, and they also happen to have a significant impact on the environmental impact. And then basically, once we've gone through that process, with a click of a button, we can punch out a 100-page design guide to help architects and developers work out how to deliver this. So that's probably something I can go into more another time, but I'll show you a few example projects on where we're doing this stuff, if you like. Does that sound good?
Yep, great.
So this is the patent book that we just won together with Neeson Merkert and Monash Urban Lab. I'm not sure if you're across it, but it's like
the patent book for New South Wales, Sydney.
Exactly, yeah. So this is we were one of I think there were 5 teams that selected to design the patent, and we're one of the 2 teams to design this sort of mid-scale apartment buildings. So basically the new version of a walk-up. And I can just show you kind of roughly, it's us using that.
Did you say walk-up?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so wow.
So these are sort of in the order of 4 to 5 stories. And we've got the project basically selects a site, and then it also selects a site to do a pattern on. So it's all sort of just getting started at the moment, but we're sort of just won the competition a little while ago, and then we're basically just working through the next steps at the moment. But I thought I might show you how, that kind of applies to a project, if you know what I mean, that technology. So we sort of took that tech that I just showed you and did that exact same process on this building. And it gave us all of the most cost-effective initiatives that we could use on this scale of building. And it's pretty exciting. Like, just in comparison to minimum compliance, you can get an 86% reduction in energy consumption, a 46% reduction in water consumption, between 60 and 100% reduction in waste. And then operating carbon can obviously go down to 0. And then also the embodied carbon, we're able to get down about 44% and further ideally, but like that's sort of there's at least 44% of reductions involved in that, and a 71% reduction in running costs, which I think if, like in this topic of housing at the moment, when everyone is sort of saying we just need to build it quick and cheap in a sense, I don't think affordability and sustainability are conflicting topics.
No,
And
that's really, really, really interesting and very important, given that, at the moment there's a move to get rid of the National Construction Code, really, or
yes,
freeze it, or, review it. Even the Productivity Commission said we had to review it. And, Peter Dutton said if he gets in, he'll freeze it for 10 years. South Australia has done the same thing already. So that's really interesting. With the embodied carbon, Ross, what measures are you using for that? Because I understand that's still kind of, work in progress.
yeah, across the industry, 100%. I would say anyone who's claiming that they are, entirely on top of embodied carbon, I think would be lying.
Okay.
Basically, like I think that, like, it's very hard at the moment for anyone to get really accurate data from all suppliers at the moment. And so that's sort of part of the challenge. Also, I think what's also part of the challenge with embodied carbon in the industry at the moment is like, we do need to be rigorous and detailed, but often the time when you can impact the design is when you don't have enough information. And so, like, a lot of what we do is use some like high level estimates of what will be the sort of like from previous projects. And we might say 25% of your impact is going to be building services, 25% of your impact is going to be in your structure, this percentage is going to be your facade, things like this. And then we try and make recommendations on real things that we know will significantly reduce the embodied carbon. Now, can you 100% verify that at that early in the project? Hell no. Like you don't even know who your supply chain is at that stage.
Yeah.
But then, there's a other school of thought of going deep into LCAs and, which take time and you need so much information, which is great. But often you've only got that information once all the design decisions are made. And so it's sort of like there's a little bit of chicken and the egg going on there. But I think like the whole industry needs to work together to push it further. But there are certain things that you can guarantee are going to reduce embodied carbon, like just having less materials and, not doing basements when you can avoid them and different things like this. There's lots of like, logical moves that you can make early on.
Columns apparently a big thing. By putting columns in, you can reduce enormously the embodied carbon that you need, the amount of concrete, because you don't need such very powerful spans across a building. That was one of the architect talks I went to a while back.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. There's a lot of logic in going to a structural engineer first and asking them what is the most low carbon and efficient structure we can use, and how do we design around that, rather than coming up with an imaginary design and asking a structural engineer to work it out.
So it's really exciting that you're saying that you can build, high quality buildings to, a high standard without compromising the way the industry seems to want to compromise by getting rid of regulations.
Definitely. I would say, like, big claim, and we can back it up, is that, we can do housing on budget with like much, much lower environmental impact and much, much lower operating costs, like, both in the order of like 80% reductions. So it's there's a huge opportunity there. The other thing I was going to share with you is like not just new housing, but there's so like in Melbourne alone, there's 1 million homes that need to be retrofit. I don't know the same number in Sydney, but there's got to be at least a million existing homes in Sydney that need to be retrofit.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a project that we did in Melbourne, which is like we decided to start with one, basically. So it's like 15 studio apartments that we took from the lowest performing building we could possibly find, basically, to a plus energy retrofit. So basically, doing all of the logical, cost-effective initiatives to transform an existing building, but nothing more.
Would you like to be on TFE Learn? TFE Learn is a chance to leverage your expert understanding of green design, sustainable materials, or technological innovations and turn them into discrete episodes that your audience can fit seamlessly into their busy life, whether they want to listen or watch. If you want to sponsor one of these episodes and feature as a presenter, get in touch today. Send an email to Events at the Fifth Estate to learn more.
And so in this situation, we sort of got brought in right at the beginning, provided the feasibility study. You can see here like an 82% reduction in body carbon, which is that's a great way of reducing a body carbon just by fixing up existing buildings rather than it could have easily got in the hands of someone else that knocked this building over, built something new that was probably not that much bigger and not that much better, that would have consumed a lot more body carbon. So this has been a really exciting project for us to see sort of how, and it was together with Kennedy Nolan. It's not only been pulled off in a very cost-effective manner, it's sort of made the spaces so much better for the residents. It's made it so much more comfortable. The bills have dropped so much, and it creates a really sort of just like so much better outcome than bowling it over and building new. And I think this is what we're finding on retrofit projects more and more, is that actually there's value in that you can't, that's hard to measure at the moment, that it's creating certain projects that you couldn't create new if you tried. And I was going to show you this one, which is our office.
Wow.
So this is the one that I've got data on for you. And so this is basically the sister project to that apartment building, which is a retrofit of was a warehouse converted into an office space. So it was a chocolate factory and a jiu-jitsu studio.
Whereabouts is it, Ross?
It's in Richmond.
Yep.
And so we worked together with NMBW and Openwork, and created a plus energy retrofit of an office building. So this is sort of the idea. And I think some people can be a bit religious about Passive House, for example. And it's like, I fully support Passive House and its principles and its objectives, but not every project needs to fully, go for that.
Mm.
And this is in effect, our goal was to basically, sort of hit the equivalent of Passive House performance on this project, without being prescriptive about it and being imperfect about it, and trying to do that in a cost-effective way. But then also not only in winter time, having the ability to fully seal it up, but in summertime having the ability to fully open it up and let it breathe.
I'd love to hear a little bit more about this, because you've got some really interesting details there. The Bernoulli effect means that summer breeze will help suck out air out of the atrium. That's the kind of thing. Can you explain how these systems work? So hot air rises, we know.
Yeah, it's pretty simple. I mean, basically, in effect, we've got the building has 5 courtyards that have been cut into it, and they've all got nice plants in those. And in summertime, the garden gets watered. There's a courtyard right in the middle of the building, and then there's an atrium, and at the top of the atrium are skylights, in effect. And so those skylights open up, and that allows the hot air to sort of, through stack effect, to just basically naturally be drawn out of the roof there. But also the Bernoulli effect is basically just when the wind is blowing, it'll create a negative pressure system, and that will help suck the air out of the building as well. So it's just basically helping induce the airflow, and taking full advantage of that.
Does it need the wind to do that? Isn't the differences in temperature enough?
Yeah, well, that's it. It's not that it needs it. It still works well on a still day, which is where the stack effect works. But it's a combination of things that are doing that. But I guess what's also unusual and interesting about this is a lot of projects, they sort of design them to be able to do these things, but then the operations of them don't necessarily utilize them in the way that they were designed for. And I guess we didn't plan to be the tenants, but the client sort of convinced us to move in when they finished the project. And it was a great opportunity for us to sort of move in and actually kind of be part of the project and make sure it's doing what we say it's going to do.
So good. Does it have aircon, by the way?
It does, yeah. So we were definitely pushing to avoid it, but it was always supposed to have some heating. And originally we were trying to plan for just having the future allowance for cooling rather than cooling it.
Yeah.
But
Because it's going to get really, really hot in the future already. I mean, I'm hearing about apartments in New Zealand. The other day, they recently built apartments. They're 50 degrees in the day and 30 degrees at night because they
yeah,
didn't
wow,
think it was going to be that hot in New Zealand, so they didn't plan for it, and they're
yeah.
all opposed to regulations there. So, air conditioning might be just a lifesaver now, right, rather than a nice to have.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I mean, it's easy for me to say, based on the analysis that we shouldn't put the air conditioning in there. But being a tenant, there's definitely been hot days when I've walked an hour to get to the office and been very relieved that there's cooling in there. And
Oh yeah.
the reality is we don't use it much, but like we have the ability to on those days. And I guess like what's interesting though is like the client really wanted the brief for the project was to make it feel more like a home and less like an office. And I think that was a bit ahead of their time because this was like pre-COVID when they came up with that.
Yeah.
And I guess like now it's the kind of workplace that people want to be in. And like we won the commercial architecture award for in Victoria for this, the
Oh,
top award. Like we also won a national architecture award for this. So it's been really like loved and celebrated for the small project that it is. And like there are 40,000 commercial buildings in Greater Melbourne. Our philosophy was let's start with one. And so like, but the other part of the brief with the client was that they wanted it to be quite manually operated. They didn't want it to be this automated machine. And so actually it's not like we have automated windows that open and close. It's like it's got doors that we like doors and windows that the community manager on the project gets an email each day. And when the weather's right, they open the building up. And when it's not, they close it up basically.
that's
And
pretty cool too.
it's interesting. Yeah. Like I would have thought they'd never actually do it. But like, we've been like Justin is his name. He's our vibe guy in the office, and he cruises around, opens it all up, and I always ask him, does it take him ages? And it doesn't really. It like takes him just 5 minutes to whip around the place, and he quite enjoys it.
Yeah, it's fun to do
And
that kind of thing. Yeah, but these in the middle there. There's it looks like I didn't know what it was, but I've just realised what it is. Are they folds of fabric that then pull across when it gets really hot?
exactly. So it's actually
Wow.
like it's industrial greenhouse fabric. And so that is on a there's a little button that automates it, click of a button and you can close it up. And so sort of the intention there was this was where the architects were great working with us on our modeling because we just tested all these different things and suggested what were going to make an impact and what weren't. And there was benefit in having those skylights north facing because we needed the heat on the slab in winter. But then there was also going to be an issue in the summertime with that like north light getting in and getting too hot.
Yeah.
So the solution was let's just like have retractable shading there. So when on the hot days we can shade it and still ventilate it at the same time.
I love that idea. It's like my grapevines; they're about to start dying.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, and this is probably where it gets exciting as well. Like, so this is we've now got 1 year of data,
Mm.
and to basically back up what we claimed it was going to do to begin with. So it's basically it's performing pretty well in line with exactly what we wanted it to do, which is pretty exciting. So, but there's been all kinds of hiccups. Like, I'm not sure if you've ever been involved in one of these processes before, Tina, but it's like there are a range of challenges. It's not like the kind of the tuning of the building goes all that smoothly. And so from start to finish, we've kind of like had to kind of learn together, like us being on the site, part of the design team, all the other tenants and the owners all together have just been fine tuning things. But it's pretty exciting. Like it's actually, we've taken this building that had no insulation in it at all and, was really poorly performing to something that's actually outperforming like Neighbours 6-star or a Passive House
Wow.
certification. And it's just, I guess the thing is it's perfectly imperfect, this project. Like it's not like we've perfectly made it airtight or perfectly insulated it or everywhere, or there's nothing perfect about it. To do a retrofit, you've got to do it in a way that is imperfect and roll with that. And we basically just did the best possible thing we could with what we had.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So here's another one. So this one is awaiting planning approval, but we're like fingers crossed this will be approved soon. So this is an office building that we're working on in Cremorne, and it has a waste to energy plant in it in the
Ramon
basement.
in Sydney or Melbourne?
Cremorne in Melbourne.
Oh, that's a new suburb that got created after I left Melbourne. So it's near.
Yeah, is it a new suburb? Is it? I mean, it's basically next
Yeah, it
to
is.
Richmond.
Yeah, it didn't
Yeah,
not in my history, but anyway,
yeah,
Richmond. Yeah,
right.
near there. Okay, great.
Yeah, so just next to Richmond, there's a lot of like kind of it's kind of a bit of a tech startup hub. It's a very kind of like lots of commercial buildings going up in that area. And so Hassel are the architects on this, and Hassel and the client brought us in and asked us what we thought we could do, what would make the biggest impact on this project. And we said we want to build a 10-ton a day waste to energy plant in the basement. And I think everyone just about fell off their seats, when we mentioned that. But to everyone together, like worked through it. And we've actually, we got to the point together with the client that there was no reason not to do it, basically. Like it just made sense in every direction. So council's really happy about it. Council's already approved the waste to energy plant, and the client's currently just awaiting approval on additional height at the moment to help them make it stack up, basically. But the waste to energy plant is it's like a great commercial model for them, actually, and it's designed to generate more energy than it consumes, and it actually provides treated water to the building as well. So it's pretty exciting.
What stage is that at in the development process?
We're eagerly awaiting the planning approval.
Okay.
So we're hoping to hear back about that in the next couple of months, actually. But it's been it's I guess in Melbourne the planning approval process has been a bit tricky, but it feels like it's hopefully, fingers crossed, it's getting a bit easier to try and help support great developments like this that need that support as they go.
Can you tell us who the developer is on it?
It's CoBuild.
Who? Sorry?
CoBuild. CoBuild is the developer. Yeah. They're the builder and the developer.
COBIL?
COBILD. No U in there.
Okay. Yeah, very good.
Yeah. And there's a celebrity client in there too, but I'll let you work that out as we go. Now this is a project we've just completed with Kennedy Nolan. It's a great community project at Marybeck Council. It's called Balam Balam Place, and it's like a community centre. So this is like new construction, but designed to be as like low energy as we possibly could. So we're generating as much on site as possible and design the spaces to be as low energy as we possibly could. So that's pretty exciting. And then this is something I'm going to talk about next week, but I thought I'd give you a little preview of it now. So this is basically, we're trying to build a carbon sequestering tower at the moment and doing our own development.
Say what?
And so we're basically, to be able to build the tower, like our view is that like there's, development sometimes has a dirty kind of impression associated with it, that it's a negative thing. But our view is that developments can give back to the local community, both in terms of resources, both environmentally and culturally. And so we want to prove it on a project, and we couldn't find a client crazy enough to let us do it. So we just decided that we had to do it ourselves. So we're basically currently in the process of designing this thing. So we're 6 weeks into a consulting process with another 6 weeks to go, and then we'll be submitting it to planning. But I thought I'd show it to you as we go if you want to see it.
Yeah.
This is the prototype that we're building as the 3-story version of it. So the bigger building is a Hotel Optimismo. And it's basically going to be a combination of it's very mixed use. It's got retail, hospitality, wellness, office, and majority of it's a hotel. This is trying to emulate those building typologies. So we're doing 1 floor of commercial, 1 floor of hotel, a rooftop greenhouse, and it's all sort of This is together with Building 4.0 and MAB supporting us on this project too.
So Building 4.0 being the Cooperative Research Centre that's at Monash and involves industry and government, and MAB as well, which is a Melbourne developer, yeah.
Exactly. So, yeah, Building 4.0 is a CRC fund.
Yeah.
So this is the little model that we built of it as it evolved. And then this is the tower version of it. So we're basically working through trying to build the tallest timber building in the world. It would be 32 stories with no concrete in it at all. So we're basically it'll have like timber bracing, columns, beams, seal, like so glulam, and then CLT slabs. And so the core is not structural. So we're managing to get concrete almost entirely out of the building. And the goal will be, it's probably the only place we have concrete is that we do need a basement actually. So just to make it work spatially, we were going to have a basement. Otherwise we we're going to have to actually, if we didn't have a basement, we're going to have a lot more concrete up higher to hold on to some of those heavy pieces of equipment.
So, Ross, before you go beyond that,
yeah.
We've been told in the past it's impossible to do a fully timber building because the size of the timber structure at the bottom would take away most of the floor space.
Yeah. Well, I'll show you the floor plans next week, but they're big columns. I mean, part of the inspiration for me was I went and visited the developer behind the tallest timber building in the world, Mjøstarnet in Norway. And I just went and hung out with him and asked him how he did it. And he was pretty simple about it. It was just like, I just sort of pulled a good team together and asked them to work it out. So we sort of spent 2 years trying to pull the right team together and found a really lovely, optimistic crew. And we found a really great fire engineer. We found a great structural engineer. They're sort of like, we've sort of taken all of the pragmatics first. And then we're working through, like, you know, it's almost like in some ways the architecture is taking a slightly back seat in this moment. And we're sort of doing all of the engineering up front, designing a really like logical, cost-effective timber structure. We're basically cladding it entirely with solar and trying to build it like not just the structure, but the facade from carbon sequestering materials. So it's quite like this would be this has never been done before anywhere in the world. So and probably for me, what's the most exciting thing about it is that like we're working together with a builder on it, and we're trying to work through the financials on it at the moment. But at this stage, like our goal and our sort of vision for the project is that we want to build this at conventional construction rates. And so that's the big kind of like challenge to the industry is to say, try harder. We can like build projects that are, you know, not just small, but at scale that have, a positive environmental impact, that give back energy to the city, that give back water to the city, that import food waste and transform it into valuable byproducts that can like sequester carbon in their construction and still make a buck while you're at it.
So if everything goes to plan, will MAB actually want to build it, or are they just kind of there as the early collaborator?
MAB are involved in the prototype at the moment, but MAB have no involvement in the tower at the moment. So we're just having a go at this on our own.
And seeing what happens, and then obviously trying to get the investors in or the developers in to actually make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. We're sort of like in this phase, I'm just sort of transparently showing I feel like people are often a bit guided on their projects as they evolve, but this is something that we're just...
this is the property.
we just like sharing projects as they're coming along. And I feel like why not be transparent about what we're doing? So we're learning as we go. I'm not trying to claim that we've got it all solved, but we're trying to sort of start creating projects ourselves that we don't have to compromise environmentally. And so like this, for example, is just a little flavor of like the work in progress wall makeups, but you know, things like spray on cork and carbon sequestering insulation and like magnesium oxide board, and seeing if we can actually use timber studs on a facade. So there's a bunch of like, you know, stuff on here that everyone tells me through my whole career that I'm insane. And I guess we're trying to find a way to see if we can pull it off. So this is like we made little maquettes of these wall makeups together with Second Edition for a new normal Sydney. And like we're slowly just trying to problem solve all of these things that everyone says, no, it's not possible. We're trying to find a way to make it work. Here's another. I'll keep moving if you like. Or,
yeah.
So this is another thing that we did as a sort of different investigation. So this was something that we just did because actually Nigel from NMBW kind of hit me up and asked me to help him out with it because he knows I'm a shit stirrer. And so we basically, in Melbourne, they're trying to knock down all of the housing towers. And there's a lot of people saying a lot of things about it. And we just decided we would look into seeing whether it made sense or not.
Okay, and I'm interested in this.
So we basically looked into what it would cost if you knocked it over. And just to be really kind of like objective about it, we just sort of asked it because it's quite complex, like there's, they're big sites. They need to increase density. If they knock them over, they like in effect basically need to, like they need to hit the same amount of density or more actually on those same sites. And so you can test all kinds of 75 different combinations of what you could build on that site, but it's a good way of like kind of, confusing everyone along the way. So we just asked the question, if you knock those buildings over, firstly, you would never be able to build them at the same scale that they are right now, which is like because, they are quite tall in the city. And we are in a situation where we need more housing, clearly. We asked the question, if we knocked them over and built just the exact same new, what would it cost? What would the impact be? And, is it better to knock them over or to fix them up, basically, and just ask that question? So option one was basically knock it over and build new. Option two was basically to retrofit it, but do it in a way that was sort of like independent of like Homes Victoria's requirements and just make it work, basically. And then case three was to to retrofit it and basically do it up to the standards that Homes Victoria needs, so it can still be public housing. And what we found was that, like, basically by fixing them up and rather than knocking them over, you could save in order of about sort of like 35 to 41 mil in capital costs, while you can also reduce the running cost by about 70%. We'd be able to sort of allow residents to stay on site and like rather than fully having to decant them, we could sort of transform the apartments in sort of batches and you do different floors at a go. There's a big sort of myth around about the fact that they just needed to be knocked over because of earthquake upgrades, which is a total myth. Like we actually got a Kiwi structural engineer to come in and advise us on it, and turns out that's not true at all. And the other pretty exciting outcome was that you could reduce embodied carbon by about 34 to 36% by retaining them and fixing them up. So it's sort of like it's hard to find a reason to knock them over, to be honest. I'm not sure why you would do it commercially or environmentally or socially. So it's interesting, but I guess it indicates that the government is sort of maybe making quick decisions without looking into it thoroughly enough.
Where's it at the moment, the decision on this?
There's been a lot of heat on the government, and I think they're currently sort of having to demonstrate the process behind it. I think some of them have already been like confirmed that they're getting knocked down, and then there's a number of them that are still up for debate at the moment. So a lot of people are trying their hardest to find a way to not let them get knocked over.
So, Ross, the other thing is that it's sort of commonly understood or believed that it costs a lot more to retrofit than to build new.
Yes, that is
what's your view?
People say. Yeah. Well, I'd just say that's absolutely not true. Like that is just it. Really, there's a long sliding scale of what you can do to retrofit a building, from changing the light bulbs to like recladding the entire facade. Do you know what I mean?
As long as your foundations and structure are strong, etc. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, look, and this is the thing. We're not saying that all of we only did one investigation on one of the buildings, and there are 44 buildings that are, like supposed to be knocked over. We found, like, from a relatively thorough but, still early days investigation, quite conclusive, like, results to say it's worth doing a deep dive into this and proving otherwise. But you need to take each building as a case-by-case scenario, and there would definitely be, like, there are all kinds of buildings that have just reached end of life, and it would cost a lot more to fix them up than to knock them over. And I would say, depending on who owns it and who's paying for it, you can't just be completely idealistic about this and say every building needs to be fixed up. Obviously heritage is a different story, but there are so many buildings out there that are underperforming currently that are, like, can be upgraded significantly, and all done within this sort of bracket of paying for itself, within sometimes 5 years. The amount of things that you can do, and, like, these initiatives to introduce them, they're more profitable than a lot of the projects that we're all working on. Do you know what I mean? Like, just like the skills that our industry has, like, doesn't all have to be, like, sort of in the direction of building new buildings. And, like, there's so much work out there that needs to be done in our cities to fix up these existing buildings, and we can all, like, benefit from that collectively.
No, that's fantastic.
So speaking of, like, this is a retrofit project we're working on as well, which is we're taking the plumbers and gas fitters building off gas, which is a bit of fun. So this is heritage listed Graham Gunn. That was Graham there. So he's now passed away, but we got to take Graham there a few years ago, and it was the first time he went back there. So this is, like, quite an iconic piece of architecture in Melbourne. It's brutalism before brutalism was a thing. He sort of was like, it's the first brutal building in Melbourne. And it was sort of designed to sort of exemplify the strength of the gas fitters. So basically they were the first of the unions to move out of Trades Hall, and that was their building that they moved into their headquarters, and it still is. And so this is an opportunity to take it, to sort of, like, work together with them and turn it into a state-of-the-art retrofit. So this is underway together with Kennedy Nolan, and it's had heritage approval, and we're now just working through, I think it's been approved in council too. And then, hopefully this will start in construction soon, but it's just another great example of what you can do to something existing. I'm also doing something similar with the master builders. So we're working together with Fieldwork to do a retrofit of the master builders. So it's quite exciting to see what all of these sort of industry bodies are doing in terms of retrofit. Be good to see local councils do a bit more, and maybe I haven't seen what property council's up to, but maybe they could do a bit more too.
I think they rent their properties.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And, like, this is something radical that we've been working on, if you want to see it. It's so this is a 1960s hotel on the peak of a mountain in Switzerland. So this is our biggest project that we're working on at the moment, and this is, like, a pretty radical retrofit project that we're doing. So we're basically taking it from a consumer to a producer, so fully recladding it in high-performance insulation, high-performance glazing, airtight layer. And this is, like, solar facades, solar rooftop. So it's quite exciting to see what you're allowed to do over in Switzerland with clients versus what Australian clients are sort of have an appetite for, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So these guys are really excited about doing as much as they possibly can. And so we're sort of just working through this at the moment.
So who's the client and where is it?
The client, they're called Vice Arena Group. So Rito Gertner is the client. He he owns the building. He also owns the whole ski resort. So it's a pretty cool client to have in Switzerland. And they it's like the 5th biggest ski resort in Switzerland. So that's a little flavour of what's going on there. It's pretty special. So that's the rooftop wellness area. This is I can probably talk for days, Tina. Do you want me to?
I know we're nearly at the 1 hour, so if you want to, I know you could do a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I'll wrap up. I was just, we're doing, like, this is we're working with products, we're working with master plans, where, there's a number of master plans got on the go. And probably just to finish off, like, this is something that's exciting that's coming up soon. So this is where I'm at right now, the Boyd Baker House in Long Forest in Victoria, so just between Bacchus Marsh and Melton. It's about 45 minutes out of the city. It's 2 Boyd houses and a Roy Grounds library, and we're going to do a New Normal Melbourne Round 2 as a launch for Design Week between May 19th and May 23rd with 12 new projects to transform the city.
Yeah.
And we're going to be inviting people from all over the country to meet up and talk about how we transform our city. So it's like a 5 days of festivities, a conference, and we're going to run it like a motel for 5 days. So you'll have to come along.
Oh, that sounds great. Can you quickly wrap up what a new normal is, what you try to do with that?
Yes, sure. So we basically wrote a strategy to transform the whole city, like a paper, a book in a sense. And we found that it would cost about $100 billion and, like pay for itself in about 10 years, similar to what we do on buildings, but we just did it for a city.
Yeah.
But, what was interesting is it's like we thought we could present this to state government and they might do something with it. But actually they kind of were like quite interesting, where they just sort of came back to us and said, you really, if you want to do something with this, you need to go build projects, make sure they're profitable with the private sector, make sure you gain public support, and that's when the policy comes. So we've just been...
That's interesting, isn't it?
I think so. I mean, I guess it was like, quite kind advice from someone on the inside. And I think that's what we've been doing ever since. So, basically we launched it at Design Week 4 years ago. We got... we worked together with 15 architects from Melbourne. So these are the 15 renders that we came up with. And then we didn't really know what we were doing at the time, but I guess along the way, we decided that we would just go get these projects funded. So we put them out to the public and then slowly found investors and started building some of them. So I showed you a number of them today. 3 projects are built, 9 are funded, 2 are in construction, and the rest are awaiting planning approval. So it's sort of, I guess the main thing is that, we can sit around and complain about businesses or the government or the general public, but it's pretty exciting about the fact that we can just get on with it. There's no real reason why we shouldn't. So let's not complain about it and let's just do it.
Oh, that is just marvellous. Thanks, Ross. That's a great walkthrough and description. That's really, really good.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's really exciting, and I love your work, and I love the fact that you're prepared to go in there and try all these amazing ideas and, happily call yourself, describe other people describing you, saying other people describe you as mad. So I think we like a bit of mad. It's probably the only way to get through what we're facing, right?
And I agree. Well, and I guess most importantly, do you know what the hell we do anymore now, Tina, or is it still as confusing as it always was?
Oh, no, I think it's really good. That really has eliminated what you do. I think the new normal had me very confused about, whether they were real projects or prototypes or whatever, but you're actually trying to, bring them to life, which is really interesting. So that's actually, clarified a lot of stuff, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the event next week.